All right, good morning. Another video coming your way, and I'm doing a series on what I call the God of the Atheist just died. And in the first part, we looked at the quantum level, and we looked at what matter is made of, and we found out that matter, quote unquote, the particles, the fundamental particles, physicists have been slamming protons together in colliders all around the world, and they've come up with fundamental particles, and say like an electron is one of them. Anyway, but come to find out there's a level below that, and that level is what they call 20 lines of fluctuating 24 lines of fluctuating forces. In other words, each particle, each different particle, is made up of the intersection of these 24 lines of fields, fluctuating forces, but of course we don't know what they are. Then in part two we looked at not just that was the quantum level, and in part two we looked at the macro level, the universe as a whole, and found out that the universe is made up of two unknown forces, dark energy and dark matter, and that's as far as I'm going to go here. You can watch that to find out more. And then we looked at part three, we looked back at quantum mechanics, back down at the smallest level, and they talked about how it seems that at the quantum level, even at the quantum level, you're dealing with information, and you're dealing with holograms, etc. So again, if you want to watch that part, you can. It's very interesting. But at this part, again, we're back down at the quantum level, and we're still looking behind the curtain at what our reality is really made of. And so, again, from what I want to re-emphasize from the last one, don't get too bogged down on trying to understand all of the science. But what I do want you to do is concentrate at just this. When they talk about what they talk about, when they use the terms that they use, ask yourself, where does this kind of thing come from? Mind or no mind? So again, we went from actually particles that don't exist to unknown forces controlling 95% of the universe at the macro level, until we found out that the entire universe, by the way, is built on mathematics and holograms. Well, mathematics, again, is not random. It's very precise. So without further ado, let's watch the video.
As a graduate student, I really fell in love with Einstein's theory of relativity. His description of gravity is curving space-time.
Okay, so super nutshell explanation of how gravity works according to Einstein's theory of relativity. Now, this is a big oversimplification, so science nerds, do not hate on me. Basically, the idea is that space is a kind of fabric, and objects, such as planets, sit on this fabric and make it sort of bend or curve so that other objects, like other planets, will fall toward it. Heavier objects cause a heavier curving of space, or a stronger gravitational pull, meaning objects fall towards them faster. So this is a very geometric description of gravity.
When I studied particle physics, it's just it wasn't a geometric theory in the same way that gravity is described as curving space-time. So I wanted to understand a description of elementary particles that matched up with Einstein's theory of gravity. Because the universe is just one thing, right? So there has to be a unified description of this place where we are living. When you do fundamental mathematics, you invariably see these very elaborate, complicated, beautiful mathematical structures that come out. And it just so happens that some of these beautiful mathematical structures describe our physical universe.
So are all particles the same somehow?
Yeah, they're all different fibers of this E8 Lie group.
Well, that's just weird.
Isn't that great?
So it's weird and mysterious that a point space in 8 dimensions is so somehow fundamentally related to our 3-dimensional reality, isn't it?
Yeah, that's weird. Yeah. I mean, it's wonderful and mysterious why mathematics works so well to describe our universe at all. Our physical laws, the fact that they're accessible to us, and that some fundamental bits of mathematics actually describe our physical world, that's really remarkable. Like we're living in a bit of mathematics that's come to life.
Hi, my name's Clea Irwin. I'm the Director of Quantum Gravity Research, working on a theory of everything called emergence theory. What is reality? Is reality made of energy? And if so, what is energy? Is reality made of information? And if so, what kind of information? Is it binary, made of zeros and ones? Is the universe a binary computer?
Okay, so in Klee's theory, reality is at its most fundamental level a code, or a language, and this code relates deeply to E8. Klee envisions a substructure of space and time at the tiniest possible scale. You know how your TV screen is broken down into fundamental units called pixels? Well, emergence theory suggests a three-dimensional pixel of reality, a fundamental building block that everything is built from, the tetrahedron.
So, as we continue and discuss what we just watched, again, I want you to do something for me. I want you to ask yourself, what is more reasonable to believe? What's more probable to believe? And what is more logical to believe about what you just witnessed? Mind or nothing, chance, and time? All right. So, at the beginning of the movie, the first physicist, we saw a little bit of him before. He's the one that made the statement, of course, that we're a bit of mathematics that's come to life. And he's astonished, and so am I, actually. But again, it doesn't matter if you understand all of the scientific concepts, but at the quantum level, what's the unmitigated implications of the ideas put forth by the scientists and the presenter? Quote, some of these elaborate, complicated, beautiful mathematical structures describe our physical universe. It's amazing, hidden in higher dimensions. Question. This is another quote, and it was a question. Who was the person who was interviewing the physicist? He said, "Are all particles, the fundamental particles that we've been talking about, that make up you and me and the universe, are they the same somehow?" And his answer was, "Yeah, they're all different fibers of this E8 Lie group." Well, last time we found out again that the quote-unquote particles were basically 24 intersecting lines of force, and it corroborates what he's saying here, that the particles, like he said, are they all the same? Well, in a way they are. They're just different combinations of those 24 fields and lines of force. Okay? So I find it interesting, and it always goes this way. When you're an atheist materialist, when some of this stuff pops up in your face, the way I took it from the presenter is he says it's weird and mysterious that a point space in 8 dimensions is fundamentally related to our 3D reality. Well, that's just weird. Well, and the reply, of course, isn't that great? Well, it can be, but it's wonderful and mysterious that mathematics can describe our universe at all. And I put it this way: when atheist materialists talk about like mysterious and things like that, it depends on being mysterious, but it's only mysterious if your modern frame of reference is modern science and the atheistic materialistic worldview. It's not mysterious if you believe in God. Well, it's awesome to find out how things work. That's true. But if there is a God behind it, well, I expect to see God's hand in it. And I'm telling you, what a hand it is. What a hand it is. Even at the quantum level, it appears to be based on astronomical, uncalculable amounts of information and calculations. And we're talking about the entire universe, keeping track of the entire universe. Again, in the last video, we talked about the entire universe being a hologram. Again, think of the computing power it would take to orchestrate that. And now we're going to get into it. Well, I won't talk about it yet because we're going to get to it. But what the other physicists talked about. Okay, so the other physicist, the last part of the video, he asked the question, what is reality? Is it made of energy? And then he asked the question, well, what is energy? Well, we don't know. The people don't know what energy is. What does it mean to be a different fiber of the E8 group? Like the first physicist said. What is reality? Is reality information? And if so, what type of information? Well, I've done some videos on Shannon information versus specified complex information. And specified complex information is like this. It's like a DNA molecule, or it's like a book. What does that mean? Specified complex. Well, a book, you start with the first sentence, then the second sentence, then the first paragraph, and then you go to the first chapter, and then you do the second and third and fourth, fifth chapter like that. And it's in sequence. In other words, if you took the first sentence of the book and you put it at the last part of the book, and you just jumbled all the sentences up and you tried to read the book, you probably wouldn't understand much of it. Okay? In fact, if you jumbled up the sentences, you wouldn't understand much of it. Now, let's say we take a book and we just jumble all the words in the book. Well, that would be an example of Shannon information. There's a lot of words in the book. Now, does it contain some information? Sure, it contains all those words, but they're not in order in the way that it was originally written. Now, when you write the book, again, you start with the first sentence, second sentence, first paragraph, second paragraph, third paragraph, first chapter, second chapter, third chapter, fourth chapter, all the way to the end, and you put the bibliography at the end, and it's in the order from the mind of the author. Then that is specified complexity. Same thing with the DNA molecule. I have a video from one of the scientists that says if you change even one of the 3.2 billion nucleotides, just one, you get sickle cell anemia. Do you think that's specified complex? You bet it is. Change one of 3.2 billion nucleotides in the DNA molecule and you can get sickle cell anemia. That's specified complexity. Now, what type of information is being used to keep track of every single particle that you're made of, every single planet, to produce the hologram of just the Earth? How much information would it take to do that? Now, produce a hologram of the entire universe like they talked about in the last video. Okay? Now, in this particular, the last physicist of this video we're talking about, he talked about what are those 3D pixels made of? Now, he talked about 3D pixels, and so did the presenter. 3D pixels. Reality at the quantum level is built on a platform of 3D mathematically based pixels. Interesting. What's a pixel? Well, if you know anything about computer science, which I do because that was my background, the video screen that I'm using to sit here and create this video myself is filled with lights of pixels on the screen, and that's how the 2D structure that I'm looking at on my video screen is built. Well, according to this particular physicist, at the lowest level of reality, our reality is built on 3D, something like 3D pixels. That's pretty interesting. But he also asks the question, what are those 3D pixels made of? Energy? Well, what is energy? Answer, we don't know. So, quote, again from the last physicist, is the universe a binary computer? Well, it sure seems like it, at least some type of binary computer. Reality at its most fundamental level is a code or a language, according to the presenter. Reality at its most fundamental level is a code or a language. Well, where do codes and language come from? And this code relates deeply to E8. So both physicists tie some of their philosophical and scientific groundwork back to this E8. Again, I don't understand it all myself, but the emergence theory suggests a three-dimensional pixel of reality at the smallest scales. So just ask yourself the main question. From what we've talked about, where does this come from? Mind or no mind? What is our 3D reality down past the particles comprised of? Well, it's comprised of a code, very much akin to a computer code, very much specified complexity. More importantly, and rarely discussed, is you have to ask yourself, well, how does this code, even though it's coded, give rise to an actual 3D reality at all? How is the information and the math transformed into physical reality? How is it? You know, it's one thing in computer science to code for something, the software, but the software is useless without the environment. In order for, we're on the internet, well, without the actual physical computers and the actual physical lines, Ethernet lines and switches and protocols, etc., none of this would work. It takes an entire environment. Well, what we have, though, is an environment where, okay, I'm sitting here at my desk, I'm made of these particles, but where do these 24 lines of force, where do these 3D pixels, who's generating them, how are they being generated? Especially since they say at the bottom level that, the first physicist in this video, he was asked the question, it seems like all of the particles, quote unquote, are all the same. And the physicist gentleman agreed with him. They're all the same. So a question I want answered is, if reality is information, then where did all the information come from? We talk about it, but again, there's certain things that I want to know is, where did it come from? Where did all that information come from? Yeah, it's important to understand that it's based on information, but really, where does it come from? How much information is needed to describe just the 10 to the 83rd particles, which, and that's only of our observable universe, by the way. 10 to the 83rd particles in our observable universe. Who is orchestrating all that? How powerful would a being have to be able to manage 10 to the 83rd particles? And that's the particles. How about let's take it down to, they didn't say how many of these 3D pixels would it take to create a particle? Who knows? And just because you can computationally code for that many particles, again, I really want to know what causes the particles to actually materialize into matter. What actually causes them to materialize into matter? Where does the actual physical universe actually come from? The questions are actually endless and astonishing and intriguing to me. But what's the overarching reasonable conclusion we can draw from this inquiry? I repeat, please, what's the overarching reasonable conclusion we can come from this inquiry? Is it even conceivable that nothing is responsible for this ubiquitous grandeur of unfathomable complexity? I don't think so. Instead, what's more and more evident right in front of your face? For ever since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature, and those invisible attributes, after seeing what we've seen today, after listening to this and listening to those gentlemen, that we are 3D pixels at the smallest level, that we can fathom mathematically. Those are his invisible attributes, his eternal power. You have to understand what kind of power it would take, what kind of mind it would take to be able to create all of that, to sustain all of that. His divine nature, Now they're clearly seen, have been clearly seen, being understood through his workmanship, all his creation, the wonderful things that he has made. Being clearly seen through what has been made. That's true. So that they who fail to believe and trust in him are without excuse and without defense. That's amazing. God's word is true. It's telling you about him. The universe is telling you about him. And the more we learn, and the more vast amounts of data, when I say vast, that doesn't even cover it. Vast is not even the correct word. I don't have a word that can describe what it would take to manufacture, then sustain the entire known universe, mathematically and holographically, would take a being of unknowable power. And that is what the Bible describes God as. That's the truth. Have a blessed day.